Suddenly, a man in a white coat drove a silver needle into her neck. She fell down. When she awoke, she wasn't human anymore. She was a mannequin. Silent tears rolled down her frozen face until a customer noticed and screamed in horror. What happened to her? Watch the full story to uncover the chilling truth. Amara was a poor orphan, a girl whose beauty shone even through the dirt of the streets, but her beauty could not hide her suffering. Her parents had died in a terrible car accident when she was only 6 years old, leaving her with no family, no home, and no one to call her own. From that young age, the streets of Lagos became her home. She begged for food during the day, washed plates in roadside canteens for a few coins, and sometimes carried heavy loads for strangers just to survive. At night, she often slept under bridges, on sidewalks, or in dark corners of bus stations, using her thin arms as her pillow. Many times she went to bed hungry, with tears running down her face, but she never gave up hope that life might one day change for her. One night, while wandering in search of food, she met an old woman who looked kind and harmless. The woman offered Amara a plate of food with a smile, and in her hunger and desperation, Amara gratefully accepted. But as soon as she ate, her head grew heavy, her eyes darkened, and she collapsed. When she finally opened her eyes, she found herself inside a shrine. Her hands and legs were tied, and around her lay other young girls, all unconscious. The air smelled of blood, smoke, and strange herbs. Fear gripped her heart as a juju man in red and black robes began chanting loudly. He circled around them with a staff, declaring that these girls were chosen for sacrifice to the spirits. Amara trembled, believing her life was about to end. But then something strange happened. When the juju man came closer to her, he stopped, stared, and shouted that the spirit had rejected her. He untied her immediately, threw her out of the shrine, and warned her never to return. Confused, weak, and terrified, Amara staggered away, her bare feet carrying her into the deep forest. The night was dark, filled with the cries of crickets and the distant howls of animals, until finally, as dawn broke, she emerged from the forest and found herself in a wealthy part of the city. Tall buildings stood around her, cars honked on clean roads, and well-dressed people walked past without knowing the journey she had just survived. Amara stood there, exhausted, hungry, and lost. But for the first time in her life, she felt that maybe this new place could hold a different kind of future for her. Amara's stomach growled as she walked slowly through the busy streets, her eyes catching on the shining glass windows of a big boutique. Inside the display, she saw glamorous dresses in bright colors, red silk that shimmered like fire, golden gowns that sparkled under the light, and elegant shoes lined neatly on shining shelves. Her reflection in the glass was a painful reminder of her ragged clothes, her dusty hair, and her tired face. She stood there for a long time, her heart beating fast as she imagined herself wearing one of those dresses, walking confidently like the women who passed by in high heels and perfume. Just then, a tall and beautiful woman with perfect makeup and long, flowing hair came out of the boutique. She smiled warmly at Amara and asked softly, "Do you like the dresses?" Amara nodded shyly, embarrassed by her torn clothes. The woman introduced herself as Madame Zara. With a charming voice, she invited Amara inside, telling her she didn't need to worry about money. Amara hesitated at first, but the kindness in the woman's eyes and the sweet perfume around her made her believe she was safe. Inside, the boutique smelled of roses and expensive fabric. The walls were decorated with mirrors, and mannequins in sparkling gowns stood proudly by the glass. Madame Zara handed Amara a soft new dress and told her to go bathe in the bathroom at the back. "A girl as beautiful as you deserves to shine," she said, gently touching Amara's cheek. Amara's heart swelled with gratitude. She took a long bath, scrubbing away the dirt of the streets. When she slipped into the new dress, it hugged her body perfectly. She looked into the mirror and almost didn't recognize herself. For the first time in years, she felt like a princess. She smiled, but her joy was short-lived. A man in a white coat suddenly appeared, carrying a small silver needle. Before Amara could ask anything, he pressed the needle into her neck. The sharp sting burned for a moment, and then darkness swallowed her. When she opened her eyes, everything was silent and suffocating. She tried to move, but her arms and legs were stiff. Wooden walls surrounded her, and the air smelled of varnish and cloth. Her heart pounded as she realized she was trapped inside a coffin-like box. Suddenly, bright light blinded her as the box opened, and she was lifted and placed inside the boutique window. To her horror, she was standing like a mannequin, her body stiff, her face frozen into a painted smile. People walked past outside, admiring her beauty, thinking she was just another lifeless display. Amara wanted to scream, but no sound left her lips. Her tears refused to fall, and her smile never faded. She was cursed. As she stood frozen, she noticed something terrifying. The other mannequins beside her, their eyes flickered with life. They were not dolls. They were girls like her, trapped in beautiful dresses, cursed to stand and smile forever. The realization sent waves of fear through her heart. When night came, the boutique closed and the curse weakened. Slowly, her body loosened and she could breathe again. The mannequins turned their heads, their stiff smiles still in place, but their voices whispered like ghosts. One of them leaned slightly closer and introduced herself as Nia. She explained that she had once been a dancer, performing at traffic lights for coins, spinning and smiling even when hungry. Madame Zara had tricked her with promises of food and shelter. Nia had followed, only to end up here, trapped forever. Another mannequin, with sad, tired eyes, spoke next. Her name was Chidinma. Her voice shook as she shared her story. Her father, a drunkard who loved gin more than his own blood, had sold her to Madame Zara for a bottle. She cried and begged that night, but no one saved her. Now she stood here, silent in the day, suffering at night. Then a tall mannequin in a golden gown whispered. Her name was Veronica. Unlike the others, she had come from wealth. She had a loving family, money, and every comfort. But she had fallen in love with an older man who sweet-talked her with promises of marriage. One night he led her to Madame Zara, and that was the end. Veronica was the first girl to become a mannequin, and she had stood in the boutique window the longest. Her voice carried the weight of hopelessness as she told Amara that Madame Zara was not just a businesswoman, but a predator, a woman who hunted the vulnerable, the desperate, and the beautiful. Each girl's story cut into Amara's heart like a knife. They warned her that escape was nearly impossible. The curse was strong, and Madame Zara's magic grew more powerful with every new girl she captured. Amara's chest tightened with fear, but inside her, she knew she could not accept this fate. She could not stand forever as a lifeless doll while her soul screamed for freedom. She listened carefully as the girls whispered about secret moments when the curse grew weakest, about patterns they had noticed when Madame Zara left the boutique for rituals. Unlike the other mannequins, Amara was different. The curse on her body was strong, but it wasn't complete. While the other girls stood stiff and lifeless during the day, Amara could still feel small movements inside her. Her fingers twitched ever so slightly, and when the pain in her chest grew heavy, she discovered she could still shed tears. Those tears rolled down her cheeks, though her painted smile never changed. Days turned into nights, and on the 7th night something extraordinary happened. While customers crowded the boutique window to admire the new collection, Amara's fingers moved clearly, and 2 shining tears slipped down her face. A woman in the crowd gasped loudly, pointing at her. Murmurs spread quickly. "Did that mannequin just move? Did you see her cry?" The people pressed closer, their eyes wide with suspicion. For a moment, hope filled Amara's heart. Maybe at last someone would realize the truth. Maybe someone would help free her. But Madame Zara was clever and quick. She stepped forward with a confident smile, laughing lightly as if it were all a joke. She told the crowd that Amara was no ordinary mannequin, but an advanced tech mannequin imported all the way from China, designed to blink, cry, and move like a human being to make the boutique more attractive. The audience clapped in amazement, easily fooled by Zara's lies. They believed her words, admiring the technology, and soon they dispersed, leaving Amara's heart crushed with despair. That night, Zara's smile disappeared and her eyes turned dark with anger. She knew Amara was dangerous now. Too many people had noticed, and she feared being exposed. She called her bodyguard, a tall, strong man named Obi, and whispered a deadly order. Remove her tonight. End her life. No one must ever know the truth. Obi bowed his head and agreed, but inside his heart was heavy. When the boutique grew silent, Obi carried Amara's stiff body out the back door. But instead of killing her, he gently laid her on the floor of a small hidden room and pulled out a small vial filled with glowing blue liquid. With careful hands, he injected it into her neck. Slowly, warmth spread through Amara's veins, and her body softened. Her eyes blinked freely, and she let out a painful gasp of breath. Confused and frightened, she looked up at Obi, her lips trembling. Why are you helping me?" she whispered weakly. Obi's face tightened with guilt, his eyes heavy with memories that had haunted him for years. In a low, broken voice, he revealed the truth that shattered Amara's world. "You don't remember me, Amara, but I remember you. Long ago, when I was just a reckless boy, I caused the death of your parents." Amara's heart stopped at his words. Obi's voice shook as he explained that on the day of the car accident, he had run carelessly into the road. Amara's father, driving with her mother, had swerved sharply to avoid hitting him. The car had crashed, killing them instantly and leaving Amara an orphan. Obi had survived, but guilt clung to his soul every single day after that. Years later, lost and broken, he had been recruited by Madame Zara as her bodyguard and assistant. He followed her orders but never forgot the faces of the parents whose lives ended because of him. Obi's hands trembled as he touched the side of Amara's face. "When I first saw you here in the boutique, I thought my mind was playing tricks. But then I noticed the birthmark on your neck, the same one I had seen when you were a little girl in the car that day. I knew it was you, Amara. I knew fate had brought us together again. I could not let you die a second time." Tears filled his eyes as he continued. "That is why, when Madame Zara's man injected you with the curse liquid, I changed it secretly. I used the wrong dose on purpose. That is why the spirits could not fully claim you. That is why you can still cry, still move, still feel. It was my only chance to protect you." Amara stared at him, her mind torn between shock, pain, and confusion. The man who had destroyed her life was now the same man saving her from eternal doom. She wanted to hate him, to scream, to curse his name, but as she saw the weight of guilt in his eyes, she also felt the strange pull of destiny. Amara ran through the streets with all her strength, her bare feet pounding against the ground as tears streamed down her face. She burst into the nearest police station, her voice trembling as she begged the officers to follow her. "Please, you have to believe me. There are girls trapped, cursed, suffering inside Madame Zara's boutique. They are alive, not mannequins. You must save them before it is too late." At first, the officers exchanged doubtful looks, whispering among themselves. It sounded unbelievable, like a strange story from a movie. But something about Amara's desperate eyes and the trembling in her voice convinced them to give her a chance. A senior officer finally nodded and ordered his team to investigate. Together, they rushed to the boutique with Amara leading the way, her heart pounding with fear and hope. When they arrived, the boutique looked normal from the outside, but once they broke in, the truth unfolded before their eyes. On the floor lay Madame Zara, unconscious from her failed ritual, her face twisted with rage even in sleep. Around her, the mannequins were no longer still dolls. The curse had weakened, and the trapped girls were lying unconscious but breathing, their lives spared. Shock filled the room as the officers searched further and discovered secret chambers with dresses, needles, and lists of victims. It was undeniable proof of Zara's wicked trade. The police quickly handcuffed her, dragging her out of the boutique. News spread like wildfire, and within hours the national headlines exposed Madame Zara's crimes. People across the country gasped in horror, unable to believe that such evil had been hiding behind the beauty of glamorous fashion. Over 32 girls were rescued from Zara's clutches, each with a heartbreaking story of betrayal and loss. Some were homeless like Amara, others had been sold by desperate relatives, and a few had once lived in comfort before being tricked into captivity. Families wept as they were reunited with their lost daughters, while the nation demanded justice. In court, Madame Zara showed no remorse. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without parole, ensuring she would never harm another innocent girl again. Obi was also arrested for his role in assisting Zara all those years, but his story was different. His guilt, his confession, and his brave choice to save Amara and expose the truth softened the court's judgment. Instead of a heavy sentence, he was granted clemency, though his conscience would forever carry the weight of his past. For Amara, life finally began to change. The government provided her with safe housing, therapy to heal her scars, and a scholarship so she could chase her dreams. If this story touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with others and hit subscribe so you never miss more powerful African folk tales.